The Zaxarian Empire had conquered 17 galaxies. Their biomechanical dreadnoughts could crack moons in half. Their neural dominion technology had enslaved civilizations that existed as pure energy. For 12,000 years, no species had ever successfully resisted their inevitable expansion. Then they met humanity, and for the first time in their empire's history, they learned what it meant to face a species that had spent 10,000 years at war with itself. Emperor Zaxstal reclined on his crystalline throne, savoring what he believed was absolute victory. The massive view screen displayed Earth's major cities under the shadow of his dreadnought fleet. New York's skyline darkened by war machines the size of mountains. London's Thames running red with the debris of humanity's pathetic resistance. Tokyo's neon lights replaced by the cold glow of Dominion occupation beacons. The human governments had fallen in mere hours, their primitive military overwhelmed by technology that bent the laws of physics. Pathetic, he mused to his assembled war council, the great death-world species surrendering after a single demonstration of power. Perhaps the intelligence reports about human ferocity were greatly exaggerated. The throne room's massive doors hissed open, and a small human figure walked in, flanked by Dominion guards towering over her like metal giants. Ambassador Elena Vasquez moved with calm precision, her diplomatic uniform somehow still pristine, despite the chaos raging across her homeworld. She showed no fear as she approached the Emperor's platform, her eyes meeting his four-eyed gaze without flinching. "Your Imperial Majesty," she said with a slight bow that somehow managed to convey respect without submission. "I come to discuss terms." Zaxstal's mandibles clicked with satisfaction, the sound echoing through the vast chamber like breaking bones. "There are no terms, human. Your species will serve the Dominion as laborers until your genetics prove useful for our bioenhancement programs. Your worlds will be strip-mined for resources to fuel our next expansion. Your military will be disbanded permanently, and your leaders executed as examples to other primitive species who might consider resistance." "I see." Vasquez nodded thoughtfully, as if she were discussing trade negotiations rather than the enslavement of her entire species. "And you believe you've won?" The Emperor's four eyes gleamed with dark amusement. "Believe? I observe reality, human. Your fleets are space debris. Your cities are occupied by my forces. Your governments have dissolved into chaos. Your military command structure has been completely eliminated. What could possibly—" "You forgot rule number 1, Vasquez interrupted quietly. The throne room fell silent. The only sound was the distant hum of the dreadnought's engines and the soft clicking of the Emperor's claws against his crystalline armrests. General Corax, the Dominion's most decorated warrior and conqueror of 6 galaxies, stepped forward, his biomechanical enhancements gleaming in the chamber's harsh light. "What rule?" he demanded, his voice a synthesis of organic vocal cords and quantum processors. "Your species surrendered unconditionally. Your government signed the capitulation documents. Your military laid down arms. There are no more rules in this war." Vasquez smiled. It was a cold, predatory expression that sent an inexplicable chill through the assembled aliens. For a moment, they glimpsed something in her eyes that their superior intelligence hadn't accounted for. Something that 12,000 years of easy conquests had never prepared them to face. "Rule number 1 of human warfare," she said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber with absolute confidence. "Never mistake governments for the people. Never mistake armies for the civilization." Emperor Zaxstal leaned forward on his throne, suddenly feeling something he hadn't experienced in millennia: uncertainty. "Explain." "You conquered our governments," Vasquez said, activating a small device that filled the room with holographic displays showing real-time feeds from across Earth. "But humans have overthrown their own governments hundreds of times throughout our history. The French Revolution, the American Revolution, the fall of the Soviet Union, the Arab Spring. Governments are temporary, the people are eternal." The displays showed ordinary humans going about their daily lives under Dominion occupation: factory workers in Detroit, school teachers in Berlin, farmers in rural China, grandmothers in Mumbai, street vendors in São Paulo. But now the aliens could see what their tactical analysis had missed: the subtle signs of military bearing, the tactical awareness in how they moved. the way seemingly random civilians positioned themselves with perfect situational awareness. "You destroyed our armies," Vasquez continued, her voice gaining strength. "But every human civilian is a potential soldier. See that factory worker in Detroit? Former Marine, 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan? The school teacher in Berlin? Special Forces, counter-terrorism specialist? The farmer in rural China? Combat engineer who can build explosives from fertilizer and diesel fuel? The grandmother in Mumbai? She was a resistance fighter during the Kashmir conflict, with a confirmed kill count higher than most of your professional soldiers." General Corax's confidence was visibly wavering as he processed the implications. His bio-enhanced brain was running probability calculations that made his optical implants flicker rapidly. But they have no coordination, no command structure, no unified resistance network. Individual insurgents cannot, don't we? Vasquez's smile widened, and for the first time in the war, the aliens saw something in human expression that their xenopsychologists had completely failed to catalogue: the look of a predator that had been playing with its prey. "You think destroying our governments eliminated our chain of command? We have backup plans for our backup plans, military protocols that automatically activate when primary command structures are compromised, corporate networks that become encrypted communication systems, civilian radio networks that transform into tactical coordination grids. Even our gaming platforms were designed to become military command interfaces when needed." The holographic feeds began showing subtle activities they had missed: hand signals being passed between seemingly random civilians, coded graffiti appearing on walls with mathematical precision, delivery trucks making routes that made no commercial sense but perfect tactical sense, construction workers who happened to be positioning equipment with clear fields of fire on Dominion checkpoints. "Your occupation force numbers what?" Vasquez asked with casual curiosity, as if inquiring about the weather. 50 million across all our worlds." The Emperor's throat sac pulsed with growing anxiety. "Our forces are more than sufficient to maintain order among any civilian population. Earth alone has 8 billion humans, and we have a saying: an armed society is a polite society. We stopped being polite the moment you invaded our homeworld." The feeds now showed what their occupying forces had been too confident to notice: Dominion patrol units coming under precision fire from concealed positions that vanished before reinforcements could arrive, supply convoys disappearing into perfectly coordinated ambushes that left no survivors and no evidence, occupation installations going dark one by one as their communications were severed and their personnel simply vanished. Emperor Zaxstal rose from his throne, his voice betraying growing panic as his tactical displays painted a picture his species had never encountered. "You're bluffing. No species can sustain asymmetric warfare against a technologically superior occupying force. It's mathematically impossible." "Afghanistan," Vasquez said simply. "Vietnam, the American Revolution, the Irish Troubles, Chechnya, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. We've been perfecting insurgency warfare for centuries, against ourselves. We know every possible tactic because we've used them all." The holographic displays now showed the true scope of what was happening. On every human world, the occupying forces were discovering that they weren't facing scattered resistance cells, but a coordinated civilian population that had transformed itself into the largest irregular military force in galactic history. In New York, office workers were using corporate elevators to move weapons between floors while maintaining perfect business facades. In London, the underground had become a supply network that could move equipment across the city without ever surfacing. In Tokyo, the bullet trains were running on schedule while secretly transporting resistance operatives at 300 kilometers per hour. "Every human city has veterans," Vasquez explained, as alarm klaxons began blaring throughout the dreadnought. "Every suburb has gun owners who know their neighborhood better than any occupying force ever could. Every rural area has hunters who can make 1,000-meter shots and farmers who know how to make explosives from agricultural supplies." The Emperor stared at his tactical displays as occupation force status indicators shifted from green to yellow to red across dozens of worlds. His 12,000-year-old empire was experiencing something unprecedented: An entire species that refused to acknowledge defeat even after complete military and governmental collapse. We didn't build a military separate from our population, Vasquez continued, her voice now carrying the authority of someone who spoke for 8 billion people. We built a population that is military. Every human learns basic tactics in school sports. Every human understands supply lines from managing household budgets. Every human knows operational security from social media privacy settings. General Corax's biomechanical implants were overheating as they processed the tactical nightmare unfolding before him. This is impossible. No species can maintain this level of coordination without centralized command. Our xenopsychological models predict complete social breakdown under occupation stress. Your models were based on species that evolved beyond their violent instincts, Vasquez replied. Humans never did. We just got better at it. The feeds showed human children playing games that were actually tactical training exercises, teenagers using social media to coordinate activities that looked like parties but functioned as intelligence networks, elderly humans sharing recipes that were actually coded instructions for improvised weapons. You wanted to conquer humanity, Vasquez said, as the Dreadnought's command staff frantically tried to re-establish contact with their ground forces. Congratulations, Your Imperial Majesty. You've just learned why no human government in history has ever successfully conquered the human people. Emperor Zaxstal watched his empire's perfect record crumble as world after world reported the same phenomenon. An entire species that had turned occupation into a learning experience and resistance into a way of life. What do you want? He whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos erupting across his command center. Withdraw, Vasquez replied with the calm certainty of someone who had never doubted the outcome. Complete and immediate evacuation of all human space, compensation for damages, and a formal apology to be broadcast across all 17 galaxies under your control. And if we refuse? Vasquez's expression shifted, and for a moment the Emperor glimpsed what human civilization really looked like beneath its diplomatic surface. Then you'll learn rule number 2. Humans don't fight wars to win territory or resources. We fight wars to send messages. And the message we'll send to every species in 17 galaxies is simple. This is what happens when you try to conquer Earth. The tactical displays now showed human resistance forces simultaneously striking Dominion assets across hundreds of worlds. Not random attacks, but coordinated operations that demonstrated a level of strategic planning that should have been impossible for a defeated species. Your choice, Your Imperial Majesty, Vasquez said as her species proved something the galaxy had never seen, a civilization that became more dangerous after losing than most species were at their peak. Emperor Zaxstal looked at his war council, at the tactical displays showing his forces being systematically eliminated by beings his species had dismissed as primitives, and made the only decision that 12,000 years of conquest had never prepared him to make. Begin the withdrawal, he ordered. As the Dominion fleet prepared to retreat for the first time in their species' history, Vasquez delivered the lesson that would be remembered across 17 galaxies. Rule number 1, Your Imperial Majesty. Governments can surrender, civilizations can't. The galaxy learned something that day that would reshape every future conflict. Never mistake the humans' willingness to be governed for an inability to govern themselves. And never ever mistake their civilization for the governments that claim to rule it. Because humanity's greatest strength was never our technology, our military, or our governments. It was something much more dangerous. 8 billion individuals who could think like soldiers, act like citizens, and fight like humans. The Dominion Empire fell within a year, not to superior technology or military might, but to the simple realization that they had tried to conquer the unconquerable. They had made the fundamental error of believing that defeating human armies meant defeating humanity. They forgot rule number 1, and humanity made sure they would never make that mistake again.